Welcome back to another reading and correcting of Bottom Rung with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, who is keeping me on track and attracting people to the stream. Today we are doing chapter 22. The rooming house had been finished for a few weeks now, and while Tibs had looked into it as an alternative to the cots, he hadn't selected it. He didn't need much to, he didn't he didn't need much to sleep. Something to keep the weather out was the only thing he considered important. So, with the cots being free, the rooming house wasn't appealing. Okay, this is way too long. He didn't need much to sleep. Something to keep the head over was he didn't need much to sleep. Something to keep the weather out was the only thing he considered important. So, with the cut being free, the rooming house wasn't appealing. That's going to be one phrase. One thing it had in its favor was privacy. That was what he wanted with. Uh, that was what he wanted for him and Jekyll now. Only, now that he was here, he had to think about what he wanted beyond right now. If he and Jekyll were a team, and if he wanted to keep his team alive, he needed to think past the now and into tomorrow. So, did he want the room only for the discussion, or did he invest in his team, even if it meant the risk of losing people he learned to care about? He placed the silver on the counter and absently noted the animal head on it. A boar. One of the other runners had told him it was. The other side was the face of a woman. How long will a silver give my team a room for? The woman on the other side, tall and rotund, with brown hair that shone red in the sunlight. Ah, the woman on the other side, tall and rotund, with brown hair that shone red in the sunlight streaming through the open door, took it, made a face at the design, and put it back down. A silver gives you 2 weeks. If you don't pay up at the end of that, everything in you okay. You don't pay up at the end of that, and everything in it gets thrown out for anyone to take. No negotiation on that. Tibbs thought her voice would be pleasant if she wasn't bored or and brusque. Tibbs, Jekyll asked, what are you doing? He took the coin and faced the fighter. We need a place to call our own. We can't be a team with sleeping on the cots or where you've been sleeping and where the others have. He trailed off and swallowed the lump. Tibbs, I'm not sure if we are a team, Tibbs stated, putting all the conviction he could muster behind the words. Maybe it's only two right now, and some of us will die, but I've decided I can't be a runner and think like that. Can you? When Jekyll didn't immediately reply, Tibbs pointed to the counter. And that's how we become a team. Jekyll's lips curled and he trembled with the effort needed in trying not to laugh. Shouldn't she get a say in that? He asked before snorting a laugh. Tibbs looked and realized he was pointing at the woman. He lowered the finger to point at the coin on the counter, only to remember he'd taken it. Street reflex to never leave something precious out of sight, and put it back, pointing to it. She might be too old for you, Jekyll said between laughter, and she chuckled. Tibbs tried to glower at the fighter, but he chuckled too. How many keys? The, the woman asked. Still chuckling lightly, Tibbs had been right. She had a nice voice. He looked at Jekyll. The man took a breath to calm his laughter and nodded to Tibbs. Two for now. We'll get more as we find teammates. The key was brass, like most keys Tibbs had seen in his life, and you know what? I don't need this, but key was brass like every key in the town. But unlike them, the end had no teeth to move the tumblers with. It was flat. Magic, the woman said when she noticed Tibbs studying it. The guild doesn't let us use anything else. Too many rogues. My apologies. Too many rogues around who can pick any lock, they say. She shrugged. Security is always a good thing, so I don't argue. The door number's written on the bow. You lose a key, and I'm not responsible for your stuff going missing. Got that? You have more keys, Jekyll said. What if you decide to go in our room? The accusation was slight, but there. If I go in, it's because you missed a payment and your stuff's headed for the street. There's 5 beds in there, she continued before Jekyll could add anything. With partitions, you can put up between them if you want. What you get up to in there is ain't my business unless it gets out of your room. That means noise too. There are 2 taverns out there if you want. At this point there's more than 2. So it's 2 taverns close by. Whoa, what happened here? Close by. There's 2 taverns close by if you want to get loud. More on the way, I hear. It's safe, Tibs told Jekyll. He'd worked out that much as part of figuring out what he could do to the guild. The guild won't let anyone steal from them, and that's what we are to them. Theirs. He wasn't the kind of safety he liked. He'd seen too much of that kind of possession on the street. But other than the dungeon, the guild didn't have any interest in telling them what to do, yet. Jekyll liked to argue, so Tibs redirected his attention. He raised the key. Do you know your numbers? I can't read that. Okay, this is no longer valid. Jekyll looked at his key, turning it in his hand. You're on the 4th floor, the woman said. I know my numbers, Jekyll said, annoyed, and led Tibs up the stairs. The room was larger than he expected. 5 cots took little space, so he figured something a little larger than the entryway. But each bed, not cot, had enough room around it for 2 people like Jekyll to sleep side by side on the floor. The partitions took enough space that with one between beds, the person on the floor had to move partially under the bed to fit, but it was raised enough Tibs could slip under if he wanted. I think this is larger than my family's house, Jekyll said as Tibs opened one of the two chests. They were solid wood with brass in the corners. At least you have a house. The lock was brass, and testing it with a pick, he didn't feel any tumblers. He inserted the key and took it out. The chest wouldn't open. He did again, and it opened. It was large enough Jekyll might be able to fit in it. If Tibs could get the fighter to bend in ways he might not be made to bend. I keep forgetting just how more street than I am you are. That's feet, trust me. Tibs took a partition from where they were lined up against the wall. They were partial walls, but made of slate of woods. So that if he got close and looked up, he could see the ceiling through the small gap. Turning it upside down would let someone look in the bed opposite if they hung from the ceiling. So, the fighter said, this is going to be where our team's based. He was seated on a bed, so Tibs did the same, marveling at how soft and plush it was. Yeah, the last team I was on has a room here, but their leader talked about getting something better. He doesn't know I heard, I don't think. I'm not good enough to be on his team. I don't think anyone is. Jekyll raised an eyebrow, but didn't press, which Tibs appreciated. He wanted to think as little as he could about Dawn in his strange eyes. 2 silver a month, divided between 5 people, Jekyll said, closed his eyes. That's 6 copper each. He opened them. That's not bad, so long as the whole team pays and we get at least 1 run in that month. I've been pulled in 3 in the last 30 days. Yeah, okay, that's that is what happened when you change, you make decisions later in the book. Tibbs does not know the number. Well, uh, Tibbs at this point can work out the number 30, although he would call it 30, or 3N0, but he wouldn't bother counting the days. And he. Oh, although, okay, never mind. I explain why he knows it. Uh, okay, but the 30 days those doesn't work because it's 5 weeks of 9 days each. So 5 times 9 is 45. Um, Actually, so I need to rework something here. This is discovery writing. This is what happens, when you don't know how the world works until you encounter places where it becomes important. Here I was just using our calendars basically until further down the road I start making changes. I don't remember why I made the changes, but they're sticking, so I need to adjust. All right, where a silver gives you 2 weeks. If a month is 5 weeks, okay, 2.5. 2.5 weeks. Okay. Um, you've been okay. He's been pulled. Uh all right. So I'm going to change this. Last 3 weeks. I'll start to explain that the season was divided in 5 months of 5 weeks, which were divided into 9 days. But he couldn't explain why. Why it was like that. The one thing I don't address is how the weeks are marked, but I'm not doing that. I've been pulled into three times in the last 3 weeks. I'll start to explain the season was divided into 5 months of 5 weeks, which were divided into 9 days. But he couldn't explain why it was like that. Rogues are always popular, and I don't think there's that many of you left, so there's more of a demand there. I only got one run in the last in that time. The one where I met you. I hear things are going to change once the dungeon graduates, but I couldn't get anyone to tell me how. Sorcerers talking? Tibs asked, unable to keep the mocking out of his voice. Some were nice, but most seemed to think that because they knew so much, it made them better than the rest of them. Mostly, yeah, but I got a few adventurers to confirm it. Jekyll didn't touch his bruised face, so they weren't who'd caused it. Tibbs did a manual count of the coin hidden on his person, which was easy since he had fewer than 15 coppers or silver. I can pay for this month, and since I'm sure to get one a month, I can pay for the rest too, if I have to. Everyone clears the Warren room now. Oh, and I fought the golem. We didn't beat it, but it fights mainly with the whip, and it's fast. It doesn't move a lot, mainly turns to follow the people in the room. Tibbs, you shouldn't. You're my team. This is helping us make sure we stay alive. The rules, the fighter insisted. Tibbs glared at him. I'm a rogue. We're street. Those are guild rules, not ours. Jekyll smiled and nodded. Still, let's stick with working out the room before we get on anything else. You shouldn't have to pay for it alone. Tibbs shrugged. It's my idea. For that, if that's how I get to keep a team, I don't mind. The look Jekyll gave him made Tibbs glare at him. He didn't need pity, not from him, nor from anyone else. The fighter raised his hand. The next 15... 45 divided by 2, 22. The next 20 or so days are covered. And we're due for a team run. If it's going to mean 3 randoms, which is a lot, but it's going to give us a chance to see how good they are if one of them doesn't have a team yet. It's going to give us a chance to see how good they are. If one of them doesn't have a team yet, it might be worth offering for them. It might be worth offering for them to join ours. He stretched on the bed. I haven't been in a position to complain about my sleeping arrangement, but man, it's going to be nice to have my own bed. Tibbs nodded. The cuts were nice enough. Jekyll, wear a Walter's robe. With a friend. Don't worry, I trust her. We didn't exactly grow up together, but we're from the same area. He touched his bruise. Had she done that to him? He'd seen Jekyll fight with friends, and his injuries then hadn't affected him like that. What if she dies? Jekyll grinned. She's not one of us. Her dad's a merchant and got himself a contract with the guild months before this happened. He motioned around them. According to her, it wasn't an accident. Her father had been looking over books for years, spending a small merchant's fortune, on access to the city's library and to speak with sages. She thinks he knew the new dungeon was about to open, and if we want information on this, he's the guy we want to talk to. She might even be able to convince him to give us a discount. Are you in her? He couldn't figure out how to ask the rest of the question. He thought Jackal and the server had been it, but the way he talked about his friends... Oh, lords no. I just like her as a friend. Tibbs nodded and looked at his feet. Uh, da, 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 da. Watching the essence woven through his shoes. Tibbs nodded and looked at his feet, watching the essence woven through his shoes, while he tried to figure out how to ask his next question, explain why he was asking it. Tibbs, there's no need for the long face. That wasn't an embarrassing question. Jekyll sat on the side of his bed. I figure you've seen plenty of that on your street. Might even have done it. Jekyll shook his head. He'd never had to. And having seen and heard how the other urchins were treated during those kind of things, he was happy. No piece of bread was worth that. Okay, so we're good? Tibbs chuckled. That's not what I want. That's not what this is about. I just need... He bit his lower lip. If I tell you something, can you promise me that you'll never tell anyone else, no matter what? Even if we stop being on the same team, and even if we stop being, as Voss caught, friends? I believe it's got friends. Of course. Jekyll sat on the edge of his bed. Wait. Okay, sat on this. Jekyll sat on this side. Okay, you know what? Sat on his bed. Jekyll sat on his bed. Figured. Of course. Moved to the edge of his bed. Placed a hand on Tibbs's leg and squeezed. Tibbs, there's only one way we aren't going to be on the same team, and I'm going to remain your friend beyond that, okay? Tibbs wetted his eyes. You know how I can't do much with water? Because of your age, right? He shook his head. It's what my teacher thinks, and I didn't set him straight, but that's not why. He fell silent as he worked out how to say what he had to, and Jackal watched him, quietly waiting. Tibbs smiled. What? You're like how you describe Earth. Jackal snorted. Definitely not. I'm quick on my feet and with my tongue. You're patient. Jackal didn't say anything to that. When you talk with Earth, was there something else there? Something inside it? Like the shadow of a shape? Jackal frowned and was thoughtful before shaking his head. It was just him and me, nothing else. For me, there was a shadow with her. She saw me noticing it and she said I shouldn't want it. No. She saw me notice it. Notice it. And said I shouldn't want that. It would be difficult. And she said that I shouldn't want that. It would. Okay, it's dialogue. I can probably get away with leaving it like that. She saw me looking at it and said I shouldn't want that. It would be difficult and, well, she was nice about it, but she didn't think it was for me. She was patient too and understanding. She let it be my choice. I think that they can't force us to agree, Jekyll said thoughtfully again. They have to want us, but we have to agree to it too. They can't stop us if we change our mind. He frowned. I wonder if that's why the others died. They decided they didn't want to be with Earth and they couldn't come back. Alistair had said there was a risk of him dying, but he made it sound like it only happened if water refused him. He was starting to think that even Alistair didn't know as much about the elements, and if he didn't, no one else would know anything about them. You're the first one I asked about it, but that shadow? It's an element too. Which one? Jekyll asked, excited. Tibbs shrugged. I don't know. How can you not know? It's your element, right? It's not complete. A little of water came with it, and that's why I can do small stuff, but I have to get the other three elements to give me their version of it. Why would you choose that? Jekyll asked. You didn't know you didn't know you did know you wouldn't be able to get another audience, right? It's never that it'll never be that. Why would you choose that? Jekyll asked. You didn't know you wouldn't be able to get another audience, right? It'll never be complete. It felt right, Tibbs said. It's powerful, and I need that. I don't mind that it's hard. He closed his eyes and swallowed. I have to kill someone, he said softly, and waited for the reprimand, for Jackal to say he couldn't be on his team or be his friend. Not going to judge you, Tibbs, the fighter said, and Tibbs stared at him. I didn't land here because I'm a nice guy. You're street, and I'm enough of it to know things aren't nice there. And I know enough about you to know that if you tell me you have to kill someone, there's a good reason for it. They hurt Mama. The word escaped before he could stop them, and he was too busy keeping the tears from forming. She died because of it. Jekyll gave him time to settle. You still can't get an audience with another element. So I don't know how you think you'll have the power you need. I think I can, he said. You said it was like being buried under a mountain, under the world. For me, it was drowning. That's the element. Okay. But there's still no way to go to where I had my audience. Even if I knew magic, even if I knew the magic to get us there, none of the golden robe people would help. But does it matter? Of course it does. That's where Earth is. Tibbs watched his friend. No, that's the closest place to where Earth is. But there's Earth everywhere. Just look around. That's not the same, Tibbs. That's just the ground. It's got no essence. It's not Earth. I have essence. You do. Not this. He motioned around them. Jekyll wouldn't help him without knowing more. And Tibbs understood one reason why the guild waited to teach this part. How many young runners, realizing what Tibbs had, would attempt the same thing, get a second audience? How dangerous could their arrogance be? His arrogance. How many more would die? The guild wanted to protect what was theirs, and keeping the runners ignorant was one way. I can't tell you how I know this. I would if I could. You're going to find out once you graduate, he added as Jackal opened his mouth. But Earth is everywhere. Essence is in everything. If you help me recreate the conditions that took you there, I think I can get an audience with Earth. But I don't know what the conditions were. We were in a field, then my trainer let go of me. I don't know what happened after that. Tibbs smiled. But you know what it felt like. Jackal stared at him. Oh, you have gotta be kidding me. Tibbs' smile turned into a full-on grin. And that concludes chapter 22. If you are enjoying this, please subscribe and hit the bell. Share, hit the thumbs up. If you want to read the story, it is available on Royal Road. The link is in the notes. The link to my Patreon is also there, and you can read whatever I'm currently working on, mostly ahead of everybody else. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.